From alternate, diabetic high school girl beaten by police officer and arrested for falling asleep in class. Yeah. How the hell does this happen? And what does this say about the racist policies of our government when it takes on the system of government-run education centers, or public schools as they're euphemistically referred to when they're really just, conditioning and propaganda centers? A student who was arrested and beaten for falling asleep at school is now suing in Alabama City, its police department, and some school employees for civil rights violation, battery, and negligent supervision and hiring. The Courthouse News Service reports that after the diabetic student fell asleep while in a room reserved for in-school suspensions, a school police officer slammed her face into a cabinet and then arrested her. The incident occurred at a high school in Hoover, Alabama. Now, what else do we know about Alabama? Now, I don't mean to make a blanket statement about the South, but yeah, racism has a home in America, and I would posit that every human being on this planet is racist because we recognize differences in race, and yes, we all make judgments based on acknowledging those differences, so get over your self-righteous self, your politically correct bullshit. But there is a certain strain of racism here that when you empower through government takes a dangerous turn sometimes. And I'm not just talking about this case, because we'll get into the statistics. Ashlyn Avery, who has diabetes, asthma, and sleep apnea, I gotta feel sorry for this girl, was suspended for cutting class and had to sit in the in-school suspension room. While she was reading Huckleberry Finn, she dozed off. Come on, it's a good book, but when you force a kid to read something that they're not, engaged in and wanting to learn, it's gonna be boring. It's gonna be really hard to inspire real intellectual engagement. This is why unschooling or self-guided learning is so superior to this. And when you understand that, you understand what the education racket really represents, you see why there's an incentive for the government to take over education, not just because it's one of the planks of the Communist Manifesto, but because they want to keep you from being free on your own to prosper as an individual, as an entrepreneur of your own life. They want you to be a good little wage slave. They want to prepare you for that life as a propagandized citizen. They want you to be dead. They want you to sit in cemetery row seating. That's what they call it. They want to kill that which is most essential to human life, the exercise of your will. First, the in-school suspension supervisor walked over to her cubicle and struck it, which caused the cubicle to hit Avery's head, according to the lawsuit. She woke up but soon fell back asleep. The supervisor, Joshua Whited, then took the book from her and slammed it on it, which caused the book to hit the student in the chest. Avery was then told to leave the room, according to the complaint, and police officer Christopher Bryant followed her. Now, this is really disgusting cowardice on the part of any educator. You've got a 13-year-old girl, right? She's 13, and she was, falling asleep in suspension, and you call the cops? Really? This is Joshua Whitehead? What kind of spineless, dickless coward are you that dealing with a girl who can't stay awake, you have to call in the guy with the gun? That's your response to this? Really? Bryant slapped her backpack and then, quote, proceeded to shove Ashlyn face first into a file cabinet and handcuff her. While in the car, Avery vomited. She was taken to a hospital and had to wear a cast as a result of her injuries. Ashlyn required follow-up care to her shoulder, arm, and wrist. Ashlyn also required extended mental counseling for trauma caused by the defendants. The Averys are seeking compensatory and punitive damages for civil rights violations, battery, and negligent supervision and hiring. But why does this happen in the first place? Because if you work for the government, it means never having to admit that you're wrong, never having to say that you're sorry, never having to face responsibility or the consequences for your actions. Yeah. If these men are held accountable for this heinous crime, it will be the exception to the rule. The case is another example of abuses committed by school police officers. Activists have long decried the, quote, school-to-prison pipeline, which disproportionately affects communities of color. Now, it's not just the school-to-prison pipeline, and it's certainly true that it conditions you, institutionalizes you to be comfortable in such an environment or to see that as normal. But even if it's not school to prison, it's school to the prison that is the average American life of being a boring wage slave. I mean, you want to sit at home, live your boring bitch life, fine, But if you ever want to step up and ask, how did I get here? Maybe looking back at how you were conditioned as a high school student when you were doing the government's bidding every single day might offer some clues. A PBS fact sheet, as the Courthouse News Service notes, states that 70% of students involved in in-school arrests or referred to law enforcement are Black or Latino. Yeah, imagine that. It's not just that if you're disadvantaged by government, they're going to put you in a school that's going to give you a worse education, be part of the school to prison pipeline, but they are going to give law enforcement officers an environment where they have hardly any accountability. We saw a similar incident in New Hampshire just relatively recently, where a student in a nonviolent confrontation with another student in the lunchroom was grabbed by a police officer by the back of his head and had it slammed into the desk. When our friend Adamo Freeman there decided to try to press the case and get some answers and hold the officer accountable, he was actually charged with wiretapping and sentenced to jail time for trying to hold those officials accountable. Yeah. So you have an incentive system where they're able to pick on people they don't like. And this is the greatest revelation as to the racism of law enforcement officers. You have 70% of students involved in in-school arrests are Black or Latino. Now, I'm not drawing any absolute conclusions from this. Obviously, there are other factors. If Black and Latino communities are subject to other ways in which they are disadvantaged by government, they're not going to be able to be as effective parents. They're going to have children that are less effective as human beings, that are less able to navigate this destructive system. But the best way to navigate it is to steer clear, to stay home. Really, if you're in high school, if you're in an American government-run education center, get kicked out. It's in your best interest and in the interest of your safety in the long run to not be in one of these places. According to Chase Madar for Tom Dispatch, in the wake of the Newtown massacre, when police or school resource officers, as these sheriff deputies are often known, spend time in school, they often deal with disorder like proper cops by slapping cuffs on the little perps and dragging them to the precinct. Right. The school shooting in Connecticut has sparked more calls from both Democrats and the NRA for more police officers in schools. Well, I would hope we could have more security guards and less police officers, but maybe that's a fine line lost on people who don't realize that the very act of sending your child to a government-run institution for their education is perpetuating racism.
This is your last warning.
That would have been the end of it. And that would have been justice for Kelly Thomas, who might be alive today.
Back up.